Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. 14 months ago, my administration worked closely with the General Assembly to enact the most equity-centric cannabis legalization in the entire nation. One of the goals of which was to recognize and address the past harms of discriminatory drug laws. The Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act takes a three-pronged approach to addressing those harms. It created the Restore, Reinvest, and Renew reparations grant program for communities most impacted by the war on drugs. It also allows the expungement of tens of thousands of cannabis-related convictions and arrests, and it attempts to diversify ownership in the industry. Almost all states that have legalized have done so in a way that produced a multi-billion-dollar industry dominated by a handful of corporations and individuals that lack diversity. But Illinois is attempting to produce a cannabis industry that actually looks like Illinois. It's easy to just allow systems to exist as they always have. It is much, much harder to build something that pushes against the grain of the past. And we are going up against structural and systemic barriers for black and brown communities and people who've been left out and left behind. Barriers born of decades and centuries of racism and injustice. What we're attempting to accomplish is hard to do and takes time to accomplish, but we have an obligation to ensure that it gets as a strong start and as strong a start as possible. Over the last several weeks, we've listened to community leaders and legislators and heard the voices of unsuccessful applicants. And across the board, in a process that should be characterized by equity to its core, too many people have said that more needs to be done to ensure fairness. As governor, I'm not interested in protecting a process that people are afraid to trust. I'm interested in doing everything that we can to advance the priority that we all share, and that's fairness. That's a responsibility I don't take lightly, and I want to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to advance that goal every step of the way. That's why yesterday my administration announced that unsuccessful applicants will receive a supplemental notice of where their applications lost points. Upon receipt, applicants will have the opportunity to request a rescore of their existing applications or to submit additional information to meet the criteria. Following the issuance of final scores, other applicants that earn an updated perfect score will join the existing successful applicants in entering the lottery for the 75 adult use licenses. Applicants will not be able to change the owners on their application, but those who believe they were scored incorrectly will have the chance to request another review. To be clear, there are additional steps that we're taking to ensure that the law is applied fairly and properly. Until all our people know fairness, justice, and opportunity, we can always do better. I have long stood on that view of history, and I still do. This first round of application scoring has been far from perfect, but as difficult and imperfect as it has been, we have seen signs of real progress. With this first round of applications, it's clear Illinois is already poised to have a more diverse adult use cannabis industry than any other state. For these 75 adult use licenses, we received more than twice the number of applications of any other state that also limited initial licenses. That's an incredible testament to the number of barriers broken down to bring more people to the table. Unfortunately, it also means twice as many broken hearts and dreams delayed. You cannot pave a perfect path without a roadmap. But remember, the General Assembly and our administration had no roadmap because there was no roadmap in the world, let alone in the nation, for a truly equitable cannabis legalization framework. Illinois had to write its own from scratch. And we knew then, as we know now, that the best way to secure equity would be to flexibly adapt as unforeseen obstacles revealed themselves. That's why, as the law dictates, after these licenses are awarded, a disparity study will be conducted to better understand how this new industry is working and to correct any structural challenges to equity as we move forward in future awarding of licenses. There is room for other change here. The vast, vast majority of licenses, more than 300, remain to be distributed over the coming years. I have already offered my suggestions for how the General Assembly can change the law so that we can ensure even greater representation in this industry, including capping the number of licenses or regions that any one owner can apply for, and allowing more applicants to advance to the lottery round than just those with the very highest scores. And my administration will continue to work with the General Assembly to see how and where we can improve the process to advance our common goals. At the end of the day, this is all about getting it right, step by step, piece by piece. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my senior advisor for cannabis control, Toy Hutchinson.
Thank you, Governor, and good morning, everyone. As Governor Pritzker stated this morning and numerous times in our past, our primary goal in legalizing cannabis in Illinois is equity. That was our commitment in the spring of 2019, and I can promise you I've only become more dedicated to doing things differently here in Illinois since that time. We're only 9 months into this newly legalized industry, and we have a long road ahead of us. But equity remains the goalpost in everything we do. When I was a state senator, I spent hours upon hours upon hours of time with my colleagues studying and researching the cannabis industry worldwide as we crafted and passed the most equity-centric legislation in the country. Our goal was to create an industry that looked nothing like the industries that exist in other states and countries across the globe. Last year, when the governor signed the cannabis legislation into law, he said that an essential tool of good governance is recognizing that things need to change when our laws aren't serving our residents the way our residents deserve to be served. My commitment to that principle hasn't wavered one bit. We can always make the plan smarter as we know more about the game. And I know that together with my former colleagues in the General Assembly, we can apply that same principle to making sure this law is as equitable and inclusive as we intended it to be in every part of the industry as we championed it together. As Governor Pritzker said, the administration already has a few ideas as to how to get there, and we're looking forward to more conversations with the General Assembly as time goes on. With this additional review of the first round of applications, we look forward to making sure applicants receive their scores and then have a chance to strengthen their application. We will all be stronger for that. But keep in mind, a person can't change the ownership. This is still the first round. That means, for example, you can't add a new person and ask them to take lead on the project. These are the same people, the same owners, the same applicants, just a new chance to confirm the facts. Ultimately, Illinois will do what no other state in the nation has been able to do: disrupt a burgeoning industry dominated by white men and built until now, until Illinois, with little regard for the black and brown communities who suffered the most under the failed war on drugs. But this is only the beginning. After these 75 licenses are issued, the administration will conduct a disparity study to do a comprehensive evaluation of the adult use cannabis market here in Illinois. Based on the results of that study, additional measures will be proposed to further improve equity and inclusion in the market before the next 315 licenses are awarded. And even now, the law is already beginning to chip away at the harms caused by the decades of failed drug policies. Under this new law, 25% of all revenue collected from recreational cannabis sales are being directed back to communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the justice system through the Restore, Reinvest, and Renew program, or what we call R3. The R3 program recently announced $31.5 million in grant opportunities for organizations working and providing needed services in historically underserved communities across Illinois. Governor Pritzker is also working with State's Attorney Kim Foxx, the Prisoner Review Board, and state's attorneys across Illinois to expunge the records of nonviolent offenders with a cannabis-related conviction. Over 11,000 Illinoisans have already seen their records expunged. I got into this fight because I knew that what I didn't want to see in my home state was a cannabis industry full of people who don't look like me, hauling this equity-centric legislation over the finish line, and it was a haul. In the spring of 2019 was only the beginning. But this was never about the first round, the first year, or the next election. This is about the next generation. And that's why I'm so proud to stand with Governor Pritzker and the entire administration to see this through. Thank you.
Thanks. Happy to take questions from members of the media. Yes?
Governor, how much will this cost the state?
Well, you mean the change itself? There will be some cost, but not a large cost to the state. Again, we want to make sure we get this right from the outset. The more costly thing, of course, would be getting it wrong, awarding the licenses in a way that's not fair, and ending up with an industry that's not truly diverse.
How long do you think this is going to take?
I think I'll ask Troy. I mean, we've talked about what the length of time is. I think we'll be able to do it this fall. But
yeah, the most important thing right now is that we do not want a world where people who absolutely earned points that they should have received are denied those points. So we're going to take our time to make sure that this is as thorough and equitable and fair as we possibly can make it. So in the next coming weeks, we'll go through that process, and that's why we think we can wrap this up this fall.
I don't want to quibble with what you said, but I have to. When you say this is never about the first round, that's saying just wait your turn. That's how some are going to perceive it, and they're not going to like that.
Well, we know that moving into this, that we could have 500 licenses in the state of Illinois. So this was specifically designed to be a slow, multi-phase, multi-year rollout so that at each stage you tweak, you assess, you look at what worked, and you assess what didn't. That's very different than the way we've seen almost any law operate for especially black and brown communities across this state. This is an intentional approach to saying that equity is so important that every time you make a move, you assess what it is you did to see whether or not it's doing what we intended to do. That's embedded in the law. So when I say this is just the beginning, we know that we're literally birthing an industry from scratch here in the state. And nobody's done it before us, not in this way. So it's going to take, this is a long road ahead of us. There's a reason why for the last 10 years the industry has looked the way it's looked everywhere it exists. So in 9 months, we've come this far, and we're never going to give up what the end-all goal is that when you look back at this industry in this state, all the things that it took to build are the things that we remain committed to this day. And the fail-safe for that is equity the entire time.
Given that there were so many perfect scoring applications, the 2 veteran points ended up meaning everything. And so, I mean, given the demographics of the military, does that inherently disadvantage women and Latinos who are underrepresented in the military?
I think the surprise in this was that the points awarded for veteran status was 5 points. The points awarded for social equity status was 50 points. We were very surprised at how many perfect scores there are. And that's one of the reasons why we suggested that the next thing to do is to go to a cut score so that there's a range that people would qualify to enter into the lottery itself. It's a lesson we learned in this round. And that's why that line in the statute that says highest scoring applicants needs to be adjusted so that we can deal with a very, very outstanding application that may have left some points on the table.
Of the 21 that were chosen for the lottery, 21 operators, can you guarantee that those 21 are true social equity applicants? Some of the people who have voiced their concerns in the last couple of weeks, they say that some of these operators are actually fronts for larger medical marijuana companies and fronts for white operators.
We will be laser focused that everybody is who they say they are. And one of the things that you get as a result of the first round is a conditional adult use license. That's the time where the department also gets to look to make sure you are exactly who you say you are. And then as we move forward, we'll be working with the General Assembly if we need to tighten up the condition, like what it really means to say what ownership and control is. Right now, this process is designed for us to see all the things again that worked and figure out how to tighten this as we move forward. We understand those concerns, and there will be, when I say laser focus, not just by us. They'll be laser focused by you. They'll be laser focused by stakeholders, almost everybody. And I think the really important part of that too is that previously we didn't know who operated the industry. And we knew clearly from the beginning that we wouldn't have an equity program if we didn't know who the people were. That's why ownership has to be disclosed all the way down to 5%. It will be very, very difficult to hide moving forward.
Are you considering limiting the number of licenses in this first round?
We have to operate under the status of the law right now. So any changes that change the actual process that was outlined in the statute will have to be made by the General Assembly. So we're going to be working in partnership with all those folks there who work so hard to get this to the point where we are right now, to continue to fix this as we move forward. And again, those changes have to be made before a single license is done. We've always said, if this doesn't do what we intend it to do, we will adjust until the law lives up to its promise. And that's, we're going to take as long as we need to take to do that.
Governor, you talk about this being a long road. We've heard from a lot of applicants who say they can't afford to wait much longer because of the money they've already paid to secure property and zoning approval. They feel state delays are pushing them out. What do you say to them, and can you say more about specific dates and timelines?
Sure. Let me begin by saying that nobody expected COVID-19 to interrupt this process. As you know, the original applications came in May 1st. This is literally at the height of COVID-19 in the state of Illinois, the height of the infections, the height of hospitalizations, the height of deaths, all in that zone of time. And so there had to be a delay here. We wanted to make sure, by the way, there were many who couldn't get their applications in by May 1st as a result of COVID-19. So there was a delay, not something of our making, not something that we would have liked, to be frank with you. But here we are, right? We've moved as expeditiously as we can with all of the headwinds that have come from COVID-19, and we want to move as expeditiously as possible from this point to where we get to. You asking about the timeline going forward. As I say, you know, working quickly is important, but getting it right is also important. So the expectation here is that we'll be able to get this done this fall. There's obviously a delay in the, you know, as we try to expand and allow people to address deficiencies or points that they weren't awarded in the original process to make sure that we have as many people in that final lottery as deserve to be there.
Does the law allow you to award more than 75?
No.
I mean, because there have been delays, can you go ahead and just do another 75 right now?
I'll let you take it, yeah.
It's like mask on, mask off. So the law says that before December 2021, there'll be another round of 110 licenses. Of course, that is up to the will of the General Assembly if they want to speed that process up or they want to make any changes that way. But again, I want to restate that the reason why this is only 75 licenses is because there were going to be things that we would learn in this process that we wanted to make it a slow, multi-phase, multi-year rollout to be able to adjust along the way. That's why this was a small round, even though we know there's another 315 to go before we hit 500 as our cap in the statute.
What do you want to say to the people, the minorities and the women who did not get the license this time, who are very crushed and upset? Is there anything, any encouraging words, anything you want to say to them?
One of the things I'm so proud of is how many people really took the time to study this and learn this, knowing that with thousands of applications and only 75 licenses coming out, that it was going to be, that the statistics weren't in everybody's favor, knowing that. But what I do know is that this industry is growing, and it's growing and going to need all the things that other industries need. And these people now who have started to study the whole cannabis industry can literally bloom where they're planted. There's a number of different opportunities to get involved, whether or not you own the dispensary or you own the cultivation center. There are all kinds of vendors that go into each dispensary. There's supply chain. There's all kinds of different ways that this industry is going to grow with a population of people who now see a place for themselves in it. That's why we did this. That's why we did this. And in 9 months, what I have seen is incredible determination and amazing work on behalf of people who never thought they'd have a chance to do anything like this. This is an industry that's just growing. I can't wait to see how it adapts and grows as we move this thing out, so that when we look back on this, Illinois looks different than any other place in the country, actually, any other place in the world.
Can you give an update on the Department of Agriculture cannabis licenses and how those might
Well, right now, they're in their final stages, and in the coming weeks, we'll have an announcement with that. But the most important thing is that we get through making sure that what was just announced is accurate and reflects the best ability of the people who ought be in that final round. So when I say we're going to take our time to make sure that this is done in the most fair and equitable manner as we possibly can, that goes to the heart of why we're doing this in the first place. So as we, in the next couple of weeks, we'll see those things. But this is an ongoing, amazing thing to watch and learn and study, as something that didn't exist 9 months ago starts to take real shape here in this state.
And will KPMG be part of this additional review? And if so, will additional money be tacked onto that contract?
So the authority lies within the Department of Financial, IDFPR, and they will be in charge of oversight, so we can make sure that that we're watching this review very, very finally before we make any of those other additional announcements. We don't want any more delays than we need, but we absolutely have to make sure that people at least have trust that the process was fair.
We'll do one more.
Is there a deadline, is there a deadline for those who want to resubmit their applications? Is there a deadline for those applications to be in?
Once they receive their supplemental deficiencies, they'll have 10 days to respond. And we're working through the process of how to make all that happen. But that's why I say this is a thoughtful, deliberative process. And when we heard that there were problems, this is the absolute right thing to do to make sure that people who deserve to be in that lottery are.
Governor, wait, can I have one question, Governor, about sports, fall sports, or something? Governor, please, can we just ask you one more time? That's really, oh my goodness.
People are
We
getting
have answered
restless.
sports questions for a week straight.
Well,